Hi, Nines. So this will be the last section of this topic. So we're learning about the endocrine system. It's quite short. There's a bit of terminology which you need to know, but you follow along. This is, I think it might be page 22 or 21 for you guys. So wherever you see homeostasis in the coordination control booklet. So it's the last couple of pages that we'll be touching on today. Okay, so let's say you guys are in Antarctica, right? And obviously you're cold, and your body is going to try to do as many things as it can to try and keep you warm because you won't be able to survive otherwise. We need to make sure our body temperature internally is at, if you know, 37 degrees. And obviously, if you're in a cold environment, that's going to affect that. So what your body's going to try to do is try and keep you warm as much as possible. So obviously you'll start to shiver. And shivering is, let's say, your bones and muscles moving, getting energy and heating your body up. That's what shivering does. Um, let's think about, obviously you're not going to have your hands out like this. You're going to want to huddle up and making sure you're keeping warm, reducing the surface area that is exposed. Your hairs on your skin is going to rise up. That's again to um, protect you guys from the cold temperature. So obviously your body's going to do all these things to make sure that it's at a normal, constant level. It can even be things like, let's say you're running out of sugar, because obviously remember we need sugar for energy. And if you don't have enough sugar, your body's going to start breaking down parts of your body, stuff that you've stored, into sugar to give your body energy. So remember, it's about keeping your body at a constant level. And if it's not at a constant level, things like your cells, enzymes, and other bodily functions won't work properly. So that whole process of your body maintaining a constant environment is called homeostasis. So that's the first part here. Homeostasis is the maintenance of a relatively constant internal physiological environment of the body. So physiological means all the things inside your body. It's about maintaining it. So it could be things like your temperature, concentration of ions, glucose, water, carbon dioxide, and things like that. Um, so there are two different feedback loops. Sorry guys, had to pause the video. So there are two different feedback loops. There's a thing called positive feedback, which is a response that is in the same direction as the stimulus, and a negative feedback. So for example, what that means is negative feedback is a response that's in the opposite direction of the stimulus. So when you're in a cold environment, the cold environment is a stimulus, and then what your body's going to do is try and do the opposite and heat your body up. You don't want it to be cooler. If you're in a cold environment, your body's not going to continuously go colder and colder and colder, right? If it's doing that, if it's going supporting the stimulus, that's a positive feedback. However, if it's going to do the opposite, so remember we're heating ourselves up, that is a negative feedback. So for example, if the stimulus is you don't have enough glucose, your body's going to try and break down things to make more glucose. So it's going to do the opposite. That is a negative feedback. This is thermoregulation. So thermo means temperature. Maybe you've heard of thermostat and things like that. So if your body temperature decreases or increases, this is detected by thermoreceptors in your skin. Remember, there's things in your receptors in your skin that will detect the different temperatures around you. And what they're going to do is as soon as it's detected, it's going to send a message to this part in your brain called the hypothalamus, and it's going to be like, mate, we're in a cold temperature. We need to do something about it. So this is an example. This is very important for you to know. So let's say, let's have a look. Let's say the hypothalamus has detected these changes. Actually, I don't know if I can change this. No, I can't. Let's say you're in a hot environment, right? So obviously in a hot environment, you're going to start sweating. And the reason you sweat is because when there's moisture or water on your skin and it evaporates, as your sweat evaporates, it's going to take the heat away from you, cooling you down. That's why you sweat. That's why it's very important to drink water as you're exercising, so you sweat and you cool, you can cool yourself down. What's also going to happen is when you're hot, some people get really red on their skin. That's because a lot of blood, because the blood's now heating up. We want to cool it down. So blood's going to come to the surface of your skin, and the heat's going to radiate from the skin to the outside, because the outside is obviously it's going to make you cooler in a way. Well, in other scenario, when you're cold, all your blood's going to rush to surround your organs, because we need to protect it, make sure it's at a good hot, like a warm temperature at 37 degrees, and it's not getting cold. It's going to surround, it's going to be away from your skin. That's why you're going to be more pale in a cold environment. So be familiar with what happens in your body when the temperature changes. Right. So what an endocrine system is. So an endocrine system is actually the system made up of different glands. So glands are things that secrete means they release these chemicals known as hormones. So maybe you've heard of hormones before. So the gland, or there are multiple glands in your body, and if they release a hormone, they're part of the endocrine system. And what they do is, for example, adrenaline is released. Adrenaline is a hormone, and that is released by the adrenal glands. So adrenaline is released into your blood and carried in the circulatory system around your body, and it goes to places where it needs to go. So these are some examples of endocrine glands. You don't need to memorize this. This is just an example of what's in your body. So for example, insulin, maybe you've heard of insulin before, is made by the pancreas, and that is involved in controlling your blood glucose levels. So there are multiple glands around your body that release these chemicals known as hormones that will carry out a response. So these are very important dot points you need to know of what a hormone is. So hormones are chemical substances produced by glands and circulated in the blood. That is very important, where it's found and what it's made by. Hormones are specific, they have very specific effects on the body. So for example, adrenaline has a very specific effect, while insulin is about sugar. So each hormone has their own particular job. It's very specific. Only particular cells have receptors for particular hormones. So for example, there are these cells that can bind to, let's say adrenaline is traveling the blood, it's going to bind to a particular cell and carry out a response. It could be, we know adrenaline is linked to increasing heart rate, increasing your breathing. So the cells related to that can attach to adrenaline and carry out a response. Hormones are responsible for things like metabolism, growth, development, and sexual reproduction. So that's what hormones are. Target cells are the things that bind to allow the hormones to bind to it. So the very specific cells that allow the hormones to bind to it and carry out a particular response. Okay, so more into endocrine glands. So endocrine glands, what they do is they release the hormones into the bloodstream, directly into the bloodstream. Some glands are pituitary glands, hypothalamus, and pineal glands. The main gland you need to know is hypothalamus, because that's in your brain. Because the hypothalamus is also linked to the nervous system, because it's in your brain, obviously, and the endocrine system. And the hypothalamus is a very important gland in your body that does a lot of things. So the main thing you should know is that it secretes hormone into the bloodstream, and be familiar with the hypothalamus. So endocrine glands release it into the bloodstream. Exocrine glands, so think exo means exit. It secretes products into ducts, which lead directly into the external environment. So sweat glands, obviously sweat isn't going into your blood and traveling in your blood, it's going to come out of your body, right? So that's exocrine glands. So sweat glands are going to release hormones, or sorry, not hormones, products to the outside. Okay, this is a very, very important table you need to know. This is a table comparing the endocrine system, that's literally all you need to know for endocrine, and the nervous system. We know that the nervous system is very fast, right? It happens in like milliseconds. Messages travel very fast. The endocrine system, if you think about it, let's say that the hypothalamus releases a particular thing, let's say the hormone is traveling in the blood and it needs to go to a particular place. Obviously, the blood isn't going to travel in milliseconds. Your blood doesn't travel that fast. So it's going to take a while. It's much slower. Therefore, the response you're going to get is going to be a slower response. We know the nervous system happens very fast. The message travels very fast and you get a response very fast. The endocrine is quite slow. It still happens, but at a longer period of time. The duration of response. So, for example, in a reflex action, the hand coming off the hot platter is very fast, and that's it. For the endocrine gland, let's say it is adrenaline, right? It's going to be releasing, but the release isn't like a split second, right? It's going to go for a couple of minutes or a couple of hours, who knows? It's for a longer period of time. So that's what durational response means. The spread of the response. So obviously, if endocrine glands are releasing hormones into the blood, it's going to travel a very long distance. The nervous system, on the other hand, is very short distance. It's going to be very fast, right? Because obviously, if the longer the distance, it's going to take longer. How messages travels through the body? Through the circulatory system, always in the blood, and the nervous system obviously is traveled between the neurons, right? The electrical and chemical, electrical message goes to the neurons throughout your body. The types of message, so we know that the endocrine system releases hormones, and the nervous system is an electrical message or a chemical. Remember, the neurotransmitters in the synapse, that is a chemical. So make sure you remember that. But yeah, that's literally it, guys. Let me just double check if I need to cover anything else. Hold on. But yes, make sure you're familiar with this table. Maybe do some research on thermoregulation, what else your body does to control your body temperature. But otherwise, that is it. I will see you guys later.